Welcome to Business Playmakers, the podcast that meets with innovators, trailblazers, and leaders to learn about their experience and what success really means. Hosted by entrepreneur and leadership coach Kyle Gorman.
Business Playmakers is presented by the Employer Blueprint. Employer Blueprint is dedicated to management and leadership development through one-on-one coaching and group seminars. You can find free resources from Employer Blueprint through YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And for more information, simply visit employerblueprint.com. This is your host, Kyle Gorman, and I'm very excited to introduce you to today's playmaker, Mr. Malcolm Bryant of the Malcom Bryant Corporation. He and his wife have owned and run this organization since 1980. They continue to grow and be such a pillar in their community. Malcolm has won several awards in his local community, including an Entrepreneur of the Year, Business of the Year, Optimist Club Citizen of the Year, and the Mayor's Award of Excellence for his extensive volunteer work and business commitments. I think what you'll find through the course of our discussion is Malcolm has a passion for people helping people thrive, helping people grow, and certainly has a passion for business as well. You can learn more about him and his company at bryantcorp.com. That's BRYANTCORP.com. Enjoy today's episode. Malcolm, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for taking out the time this morning and just coming to check it out. And I'm looking forward to being able to share your story and your experience with the Playmakers audience. So as we jump in here, just kind of walk us through your professional experience and what your journey has looked like.
Sure, Kyle. I guess those professional experiences start way back in childhood, but maybe when you're talking about being gainfully employed. Out of college, I was lucky enough to be accepted to Procter & Gamble, large company worldwide, and that was in 1978, so the world's changed quite a bit, but I went off to Cleveland, Ohio. So this little country boy with a Daniel Boone accent that I was so proud of at 22 years old headed off to Cleveland, Ohio. And I think my boss, the folks that were interviewing me, I could tell when I was walking out of the room, they were looking at each other like, if he can survive that, maybe he's a winner. We got. So I lived and breathed it, and certainly was infatuated with the business world and with Procter & Gamble and the kind of training they would give you. So that lasted a good success, and I was lived in Cleveland, Kansas City, Denver, Cincinnati, traveling all around, and I watched other families do the same, and I wasn't married at the time, and I missed Kentucky quite a bit. I'm just really a Kentucky boy, and as Sally and I started to get more serious about our future together and decided to get married, we had the choice of staying there or coming back to Kentucky. And my parents were getting a little bit older, and we needed to make sure that we were responsible for that. And so we decided to come back to Kentucky, and more importantly to Owensboro. And her family had a home building business here that her dad had started back when he was a youngster, and that had developed through the recessions and the mountaintop experiences too. And in that time, interest rates were 17-18%. Wow. So real estate, any kind of business really needed to be focused, and so we ate peanut butter for a long time, and we were scrapping together every kind of entrepreneurial idea we could. And that was incredible training from just a wonderful family, and they're just magical, memorable people, and are today, and continue to mentor all of us. And so came back here, started into the real estate construction business, and then after a few years, we ventured out on our own, Sally and I together, and that led to the Malcom Bryant Corporation today. So that's where it's been 37 years with the Malcom Bryant Corporation, or a version of it, and about 2 years with Procter & Gamble, so approaching 40 years.
And so now with the Malcom Bryant Corporation, most of that is real estate development, commercial leasing, and things like that. Is that kind of the main focus of the organization?
Yes, I think we're entrepreneurial at heart.
Yeah.
We're a very curious group, and our vision statement is somewhat to the effect of we want to build and develop genius products.
Yeah.
We want to give incredible, wowing service, and we want to be around enterprising team members and helping to take them and the communities we're in forward.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, great vision. So along the way through the course of your career, who are some mentors that you've had, and what have you been able to learn from them?
Well, I guess it starts with our mom and dad, if we're fortunate to have that kind of a nucleus around us.
Yeah.
My dad was a single-person farmer in eastern Kentucky. Had 130-something acres that went like this, and the cows are on the side of the hill, and the corn was in a little bit of the flat area, and the tobacco in an acre or so over here.
Yeah.
And I was just so proud of him. I didn't know it at the time what he was doing. June hot day, we were hauling hay, and I was about 16. He stopped a tractor and he put his arm on my shoulder and he said, "Son, there's a better way." And he grew up farming. His family was farmers, and there's a lot of pride there. But he realized that was not going to be able to financially send kids to college and so forth.
Yeah.
So I learned hard work in that little laboratory of learning right there from him. So hard on a single man's farm.
Yeah.
And my mom went back to work from. She was a school teacher, but she took off while we were raising kids. And then as college progressed, needed to have some financial resources, so she went back to work as a social worker with the state. And so I was used to listening to the calls at 8 o'clock at night. Come and get him, Miss Bryant. She's going to kill him, or whatever. So a lot of that social.
That's a whole different world.
Yeah. So especially in eastern Kentucky, and so I learned a kind of a giving spirit and compassion from her.
Yeah.
And so I think in the business world, really anything you're doing, if you have hard work and you have compassion, or care, that those two ingredients that I grew up with were probably the best mentors I could have at an early age. Then progressing forward, probably the biggest decision I've made in my life, and most important, and maybe everyone is who you marry. If you by chance go that route. And so Sally has been a mentor to me. Obviously, our wife, our spouse is in so many ways, and even the female has. I don't have this scientific, but there's a gene there that can kind of look through things and get right to the focus to the point. And there's been times in our business life for her mentoring when I'm struggling with a decision for a long time, and I'll finally, in my stubborn way, finally open up to her that, what do you think about this? Within 3 minutes, she's got the right answer, and like, God, I really did not realize I could do that. So she's been my courage, my confidence, and you can't discount kids either. I think kids can be your mentors because you really don't fake good kids. Yeah. And if you've got good kids and they've learned from you with what mistakes you've made in your life, I think they're worth listening to. And there's some scientific studies that say even the daughter, after you lose your mom, which my mom's been gone about 20 years, the daughter actually starts to have some characteristics of the mom, looking out for you. And so we've got two outstanding kids, and they've been just wonderful mentors to me. So I think it's gone to family, and obviously there's an incredible amount of business wisdom that we've taken. But
that's really good. You don't. It's easy to overlook the lessons that we can learn from our kids sometimes, and it's I think that you've picked that up. I've never really heard anybody talk about it from that perspective, but that makes sense because it's easy to overlook that. There's so many times we see either ourselves in our kids or we see other people in our kids, then it's great motivation oftentimes of how we want to behave and act and help continue to raise them. So it's really
pretty cool, because I can tell when I've not really said the right thing or had the right actions to my kids. Yeah. And they'll call me on it. Not that they're going to get right in my face. It's just that you kind of get from the body language, I didn't handle that well. Yeah. So there's many times I've had to apologize to my children about I didn't really do that well. So I think they're great mentors.
That's great. Yeah, I've often made the comment. My son is the oldest, and he's 10 years old now, and I've probably apologized to him more than anybody in my entire life, because I think it's important for him to hear that from his dad, that I'm not always right. But whenever I don't do something properly, I try to take that time to ask for his forgiveness, to show him what forgiveness is, and to see that even the old man screws up sometimes. And so I often joke I've apologized to him more than anybody else in my entire life, as we've just kind of navigated that together. But
it's real. It's very real. And I can't tell you how many letters I've written, and it's the old-fashioned way. And I don't even know if they can read cursive or not any longer. But I've had to sit and pen many a letter to them to say, here's the way. I'm sorry. Kind of thing. That's
really good. Well, Malcolm, if you can kind of look back through the course of your career, is there a moment that you can look at that you recognize as a real peak or pinnacle moment, as kind of a big professional win for you?
Well, this doesn't sound Wall Street Journal like, but my quote would be, again, the lady I married. That's the win. And fortunately, I married an incredible, loving, caring, and forgiving lady, but also a person with a great business mind, and a person that wanted to engage our team in greatness. So when we decided to take this company to another level about a year ago and step out and hire our president in addition to our company, it was Sally that really said, if we're going to do this, we're going to take it to another level and raise the bar or not do it. And so my greatest win is who I married. There's no doubt about it. And it's a God thing or whatever you want to call it, but there wasn't a strategy to marry somebody to start a company. The strategy, I loved her. It appeared she loved me, and that was the basics. I never realized really the packages I would be opening the rest of my life and what wisdom she brings to it. So I'm not even sure if she go and watch this, but it's the truth. And so that's been my great win from a person.
And on the flip side of that, is there a moment in your career that you'll just never forget as kind of a momentous fail of some kind that you learned some lessons from, but you knew that if you could go back, maybe you should have handled this one a little bit differently?
Well, I think that's a great question. Probably is one that I can even give more conversation to, because I think we remember those failing times because they're teaching moments. And when we get out of our comfort zone is when we grow. And it's very seldom that when we win or really are successful in something that we learn a whole lot from it. It just confirms what we did was good. When I make a bad decision or there's a failure, it's so much more pronounced in how it affects us. So there's 3 or 4 good ones if you want to hear some, but there's a good book written that talks about stepping over the line and what would cause us to step over the line to do something that we would really need to be forgiven for. And it may be more men than women on this, but money, step over the line for fear, ambition, or love. And I think the sooner we find out which one of those we're most vulnerable to, or which ones we're most vulnerable to, the quicker we can exit those out of our life. So I know which 1 or 2 of those I would probably come close to stepping over the line. And when I say stepping over the line, I think we all know what that means. It's something that wouldn't be acceptable to you or the people that loved you. So knowing those things, I think I found out early on that people were probably the most important ingredient to the success of my life and how I can succeed with others. So I was working for Procter & Gamble, and boy, I was giving my life to them, and I was climbing the corporate ladder and doing, and it was just all in. And Sally and I decided to move back to Kentucky, and so I called my boss and asked him if I can have a few moments with him in the next week. And in the great communication skills that they teach you with a company like that, he got out of me what I was going to tell him, which was I want to move back to Kentucky. And so I told him there over the phone. It wasn't the way I wanted to do it, but he drug it out of me. And we're pretty transparent folks. And he said, well, I'll be by to get your car tomorrow, and thank you for the notice. I'm like, what?
I thought we
Isn't there some love? Isn't there some love somewhere? I thought we'd have at least a hug or a cry or something with it. So nothing against that environment, but that's just the way they had it structured, and they knew young go-getters and how they were processed. And if I had made it 2 years, there was a decision point whether I was going to be a 20-year employee or a 2-year employee.
Right.
They knew that was at that point. So he knew to go on because the decision had been made. So that probably wasn't a loss. It was a learning moment when I learned that my relationships are so important with our team members.
Yeah.
And so that may have been a fail where I thought, oh gosh, I shouldn't have expected that much. There's plenty of times where I failed, where I haven't, getting back to my wife, I haven't told her all the information soon enough.
Yeah.
Not that I was keeping things from her or intentionally having any secrets. It's that your day, whether you work 8 hours a day or 14 hours a day, this business of owning your own business is going fast.
Absolutely.
And if you called this afternoon and said, Malcolm, I'd like to build a office building at the corner of so-and-so, and we really want to expand, and I got some great friends that want to go with me, I'd say, yes, Kyle, be right there. What else you want?
Right.
We're just in the business of saying yes a lot. And maybe it's like John Kennedy when he said we were going to put a man on the moon. He probably went back to his cabinet and said, guess what I just said today? And they said, well, you said what? And said, I don't know. I said it. So we're going to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, we got to make it happen.
We got to make it do it.
Yeah,
so that happens a lot in my life. And so I'm tripping over my day sometimes without keeping her informed enough. So, you come home at 6 o'clock or later or whatever it is, and you don't want the day to be, or the evening's discussion to be all about business and so forth. So you just hold off until it all comes time. But my failure has been not keeping her or others probably as informed and timely as they should have been. And I've learned that the hard way, and now it's more comfortable for me to keep that going. But you have to intentionally focus on this communication.
Yeah.
And that's probably where I've had failure at time with my business partner, you might say, or other people around me.
So let's kind of, we've kind of skirted around this subject of success. How would you define success? How do you define that in your life?
Well, I think there's probably two kinds of success. There's the resume success, building the business success, and what you want to give a customer to know about you.
Right.
Then there's probably your eulogy resume. That eulogy one may be more important, not that the business one doesn't build on it and make it better.
Right.
But you meet people in your life that are really deeply good. Their soul is so connected with our Creator and with greatness in our world, and it's beyond the day-to-day business resume.
Right.
So it's what's going to be said at your final day. That's probably more to the success as I get older to understand than it might have been when I was 25 and eager. And not that I'm not always eager, it's just that you temper that a little bit of where to focus. And so I've grown and matured. So I think that eulogy success are people that you want to, they have an inner light to the world, and it may not be that you did the best business deal or you did you're the best team member. It's that you just had that eulogy resume that was top notch. So I would define some of our success that we would continue to be in awe of things. And I think what drives our company and what drives that eulogy resume or that business resume is this curiosity.
Yeah.
And we've been pioneers on a lot of things that maybe didn't make financial sense or make any growth in the business in the first day, but it was a curiosity that we might have had about something that led us to have a passion in it. So, for instance, we put solar panels up on a office building here in Owensboro. I think it's the first solar installation in Owensboro. Did it make economic sense? I think the return was 54 years, so it's going to be after I was gone. Did it give us any publicity to customers? Maybe some, and I think they may have walked in the building and said, well, that's cool. This building's interested in alternative energy and the environment. But it was something we were extremely curious about. And that's led us down not necessarily the successful road every day, but I don't want to ever give up that experience of being in awe and being in wonder of the smallest things, and especially our people. Just being in awe of how does a single mom with 4 kids under the age of 10 that makes hardly a living wage show up at one of our properties with a smile and dressed professionally and so positive about the world, and also she's taking classes at the community college. How do you pull that off? We're curious about how to help that person be the best mom, be the best team member, be the best daughter, sister, brother. And it's interesting to just be curious about that. So the great thing about our business is we are not only real estate developers, but we're entrepreneurs for about 300 different customers that are doing everything from technology to saving lives. And we can be a piece of what their day is about, not only just providing them maybe the real estate to be in, but really how can their business be better, and how can our business be better where 1 and 1 equal 3. And so it's probably the success, I don't know, is defined other than by our mission statement I was telling you about, but I think if you can continue to want to polish things and be curious and be in awe of the smallest things in life, that's probably success.
So would you consider, as you look back on your career and your personal and professional career at this point, would you say that you have achieved a level of success?
Some others would say so. I think that our most public demonstration of success is probably in our company. And I understand that, and that's a public side. And we build a beautiful hotel or design a beautiful office. That's very visible and very tangible. But diving deeper into that is how are we helping people be better? How are we helping people grow? I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. said that maybe one of the most important things we can do in life is to make people better. And that's something you may not see in a hotel structure or in an office space or something else we do, but behind the scenes, we're trying to constantly figure out how can we help that single mom? How can we help our president put God first, family second, and work third? And when we interview people, we tell them that boldly. And as I think it's a relatively small company, we can be transparent in that. Sure, we have an employment book and we have all the policies that make us legal, but at the end of the day, if you need to be at Mass, you need to be there. If you got a sick child at home, or you've got a parent-teacher conference at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or there's a soccer game at 3, and you're the spouse that needs to do that, or whatever it is, you need to be there. We'll find a way to do work. Not that we don't work hard and are accountable, and we put in a good solid 8 hours plus, but it's a lot less important for us to make that business deal than it is for you to become a better person. And I think in the end of the day, we're all going to be better if we'll stay with that. And you gotta live it and breathe it. And so we've had babies, newborn babies under the desk at work, and it may not be the most professional guidance that you would give to the out-of-town person that walks in that wants to talk heavy level business, which is great. And you hear a little baby cry, and you're like, what's that about? Well, I think I learned a long time ago, there's no use trying to hide our lives. I think people love stories, and they love to hear your story. And I learned a long time ago that if I have to apologize for a commitment I've made with my family, or something else that's just really important, that I probably need to pause and make sure I get things lined up a little bit better. I've never had somebody, when I've responded, that I have a commitment to my family and I can't meet at 5:30 or whatever when you're off work. I've never had anybody say, well, I'll have to go on to the next person who sells the widgets or whatever. Everyone appreciates that. So somebody has a daughter or a son, or they've always obviously been a daughter or son, and they have respect for that. So I think that's part of understanding the success. In my case, it's two things. It's being around the right people and reading good books. If I had to boil it down to two things, being around people to take us forward so that we can help people that aren't on the train yet, and finding great books to read. And I think those two things, if you could boil it all down, are the keys that I've had.
So as you talk through that, you talk about being around good people, surrounding yourself with good people, reading good books, and looking at those resources. What are some other keys to success that you feel like have been important for you?
Well, I think the greatest lesson for me is that people matter most. At the end of the day, we can have had great opportunities, build great projects, have great tangible things to show off, and have success in that level.
Yeah.
But people matter most in the relationships of your family and friends that have loved you and that you have loved, that have supported you through the ups and downs.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I think we understand that people matter. People matter most. I think second, finding your talents. When you and I grew up, I know when I grew up, I remember in the middle school it said, okay, why don't you take this, I don't know if they called it, but it's probably a career analysis.
Yeah.
Today we might call it a personality analysis.
Yeah.
Remember those days?
Oh, yeah.
And mine came back as I need to be a brick mason.
Yeah.
Okay, now I grew up in a world that was probably full of skilled level jobs, and it wasn't, you need to be a business owner or be a philanthropist, or it was talking about a true job, getting a job right out of high school, whatever.
Yeah.
And that probably was true because I like to build things and like to see things happen. So I'm really glad that I found that. But how many times did we hear growing up that you can be anything you want to be?
Yeah.
You can be an astronaut. I was convinced I was going to play in the NBA. There was no doubt about it. If I wasn't going to do that, I was going to be in the NFL or at least play in Major League Baseball.
Of course, bare minimum.
And I was going to be president. All above.
Yeah.
Well, if I'd known what I know now, I would have not been concentrating on things that probably were out of my reach, but I'd be concentrating on my A's and not my C's.
Yeah.
So we get a report card and we take it home, and our loving parents see 3 A's on there and see a C. It's just natural for, what's going on with that C? Well, I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to be. But those A's are where I really need to spend my time. So there's such great research today on where our strengths are, whether they're business or spiritual or whatever they might be. It's really a setback if we don't stop and find those personality things.
Yeah.
And I found that later in life and wished I'd found it earlier, but I keep taking them, again, about being curious. And so I think finding where your strengths are, where are your A's? Sure, it's great to know your C's, D's, and F's, but and it's very important to know those so you don't spend your time on that. But so I, in later life, have found where my A's are.
Yeah.
And it may not have been where I've spent my whole life trying to figure out.
Right.
And from the college side, I spent about 25 years trying to learn everything I could, and spent the next 25 years, or the first 25 trying to be done with it, the next 25 trying to learn everything I could. So I was studying for the test, for the first 23 years.
Yeah.
And now I'm studying for life, and that's so much more rewarding and productive. So finding your talents, taking risks, having confidence. I think for young people, having confidence is probably a key ingredient to allow you to want to take risks, calculating, understanding risk. So empowering our team and being very curious and supporting to them. That's probably been our keys.
Yeah. I love that concept. I've never heard it put that way, about focusing on your A's and not your C's, and understanding what they are. And that's brilliant. I mean, that's so true. And I think that's great advice for people to understand that as well, that if you're not good at something, accept it and be willing to move on, and know you're not good at it, so you can find good people that are good at those things, and focus on your A's. That's a great way to put that.
Well, you're so wise, that especially that part about finding people who are good at that. It took me a long time to cross that that line to know that there's people that can do stuff better than you, a whole lot better than you, and they like doing it.
Yeah.
So we found that at our company, and they know where my weaknesses are for sure, and I think I know where most of theirs are, and we do those kind of tests together. So we are transparent about really knowing, you're really not good at that.
Yeah.
And one of my strengths is encouragement.
Yeah.
And I can encourage you until you're dead,
Right.
So,
right.
But on the other hand, I'm not too good of I'm getting better at being a nurse. I'm not a C minus,
Yeah.
or I'm not a F
Yeah.
much longer. But if you were sick today, Kyle, and you laid out here, and I'd probably say, Kyle, I'm convinced if you ran around the block 3 times, you'd be better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's probably not what a good nurse needs to be. And I got to
Right.
be able to pause and say, this is different. And so, it's great to find those things.
Yeah, that's really good. That's great advice. That's really good.
It's a struggle.
So as we look forward a little bit, what do you think the next 10 years look like for you professionally?
Well, we're going to really go off script here because, how many times do we ask ourselves that, or do I?
Mm-hmm.
Not enough. When we were trying to decide whether our company should go forward and how, and
Mm-hmm.
One of our consultants asked me the question, why? And in a day like this, I usually can understand what, when, how,
Mm-hmm.
and where, but how often do I ask the question, why? I don't do that very often. And there's a great book written about the Pixar
Mm-hmm.
development of that company.
Mm-hmm.
And they had struggled for a long time. And then they had a great success called Toy Story.
Yeah.
And they had Toy Story and then Toy Story 2.
Mm-hmm.
And just tremendous winners, and the company was getting traction, and finances were better. And
Mm-hmm.
And they went to a retreat, and they asked themselves, why are we even here? What is it that we haven't done?
Yeah.
What is it that we're really curious about?
Mm-hmm.
And why even do a Toy Story 3?
Right.
And I think those are great questions similar questions we asked ourselves when we were trying to progress what's next. And our why answer was, we have incredible people that many of them are still very young in their careers and awesome and love our style and are in a rhythm of goodness there with the customer and with each other.
Yeah.
So you don't want to probably not maximize that.
Right.
Why would be is if we had some success that the world may look at in the business ways, we want to be able to take that success and portray it more to our team members and the communities we're in. And that's going to turn more into philanthropy and charity and giving back.
Yeah.
So a huge piece of our future is giving back. And we're discussing right now how to be proactive in answering that question, because for a long time, like I said before, the phone would ring and Kyle would be on the phone, or Jim or Jane, and they'd ask, could you go do this? Would you be interested in this project? Yes, sir. Be right there.
Yeah.
Not with any strategy of, is that what we want to do?
Yeah.
Let's put a man on the moon. Well, of course we would. Why wouldn't we do that? We're asked to do it. And that's back to that hard work part and compassion part.
Yeah.
You're just used to saying yes all the time. So now we're going to get a little bit more focused, proactive, and that phone rings or we're out talking to people. We know a little bit more about what we want to do, and that's going to be more focused on community's growth and the kind of vibration and the traction that community would have to attract talent. Kind of like what Owensboro, not kind of, exactly like what Owensboro's downtown.
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted to be involved in that, is we think that's the future of communities, is finding places that are special and wowing to folks, to these creative people. So the next 10 years, you don't hire Madison Silver and go to sleep. And so I'm busier than I've ever been because you've got folks that are around you that are excited. But for me personally, it'll be involved in the business still, but also it'll be a tremendous piece of giving back, or I'm really not doing service what I should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you considered what the concept of retirement looks like for you?
Well, it needs to be challenging. I've lived my professional life with risk every day, and you kind of get used to that, and that's okay. And I understand risk. I don't want to risk at the loss of family, or again, those things, God, family, and work. I can probably risk work down here as far as money goes.
Yeah.
So read a good book one time. Title was Risk Only Money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's times in our life we risk more than that if we're entrepreneurs. We're risking our relationship with our wife and our kids and our friends. And that just bleeds over. So I'm sure in my future there's going to need to be risk because I like challenges. I like the curiosity part of it.
Yeah.
I like to be pioneering and interesting there. So it'll have some risk involved with it. It'll have some challenge involved with it. I'm sure it'll be juggling balls because I'm used to that, and I can sit still and regroup, but I'm very anxious if I don't have some things going on, and is that ball about to drop? Yeah, you better catch it. And so it's just been part of our life, and so it's I think that's what retirement will just be more of the same, but maybe being able to pick and choose it a little bit more.
Yeah. If you walk out of the office today here and you get a phone call that says you just won $1 million, what do you do with that money?
I think first I'd need to get advice from other people who've been in that position.
Yeah.
People that have had great windfalls or just luck of the draw.
Yeah.
I'd need to go get advice from somebody who has done that, and it's easy to say I do this, this, and this because of today's needs, but that would need a lot of thought. I think a lot of us won the lottery when we were born in the United States.
Yeah,
I was born to a loving mom and dad. Born in Kentucky, a great state, and for some reasons I was born white. Now I've got a lot of African American friends that I'd trade places with, look at their lives every day, but as far as the economic and the opportunities that I've had, those kind of things were hitting the lottery for me. And I think we're in the top 1 or 5%. If you just live in America and make an average per capita income, you're in the top 1 to 5% of the world, as far as income goes. So that opens up a lot of opportunities. So I've hit the lottery in a zillion ways in my life, and I'm not sure $1 million check would be one that I'd have to think about a whole lot, but I'd get some wise advice.
Some good counsel.
Right.
Malcolm, let's talk about how we help others, which I know is really a strong passion of yours anyway, but what are some characteristics of people, whether it be people you've worked for, or people you work with, or people that have worked for you on your team? What are some personality characteristics that you look for that kind of attract you to a person and their kind of work ethic?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever had a bad boss because I've learned something from them.
Yeah.
Sure, there's been bosses that have talked down to you, bosses very demanding, bosses that don't read the management books of today, and you understand that. But they've all brought their own experience that you can't argue with. So I've never really had a bad boss or somebody that's beat me to the point that I would call him a bad person. So I've been fortunate there. When we're looking for folks, usually, we have found them just by knowing people who know people who know people. Good people know good people.
Yeah.
Some of our best people have come through casual conversations about, I spent my life raising my kids, but guess what? I've got an MBA. I had no idea. I saw you at music lessons with our kids in our soccer field.
Right.
Had no idea that you had this business background. Or another fellow that he was an orphan growing up, and he worked at McDonald's when he was 15. Became a McDonald's regional supervisor when he was like 19 or something. Just incredible stories. Yeah. And we find that kind of person and say, I think your experience and your story matches with what our company is about. So yes, we can find headhunters and do great executive searches, and those people are so valuable. And Madison Silver came to us through that process, and we could never have found that person without an executive search firm.
Right.
Boy, they know just just worth every penny
Mm-hmm.
of it. But we have found that in a community like Owensboro, if we're looking for that employee here, team member, it's more, I wonder what Jane is doing.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what Bob's doing. I wonder if they would like to engage with us, or they may know
Right.
somebody. So it's
Right.
rather than getting out on, the websites and all that to
Mm-hmm.
search around, it's still relationship business, back to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where we found it.
And kind of on the flip side of that, are there any personality characteristics that you've worked with over the years that you try to steer clear from, that either they don't mesh well with your personality, or that just in business that they're sort of kind of they can be toxic to an environment?
Yeah, and I didn't learn that early enough in life, and especially in business life, because again, we were reacting and accepting every challenge that came
Mm-hmm.
along,
Yeah.
no matter from who.
Yeah.
And we've decided now that the relationships we have with our customers are the most important ingredient in how we engage with
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah.
We've been around folks that are win-lose,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe their culture, not necessarily bad people, their culture has encouraged them that way,
Mm-hmm.
or that's just where they are in life. And when we detect that win-lose situation and really don't want to be transparent and get on the same page,
Yeah.
we really shy away from that, and we're starting to get more disciplined in that
Mhm.
area. So it's
Yeah.
I think you know it when you see it, but it's you can be an atheist and be whatever the other things that you might consider don't match up with what you might think is goodness in a God world,
Yeah.
but you can still be a great person, and
Yeah.
and certainly you can be another religion or another nationality or another color or
Yeah.
whatever. That's all extremely acceptable, especially the females, because they're so alert
Yeah.
and so inquisitive, and have a gene that seems to be able to discern things
Yeah.
quicker and better than maybe us macho males, or
Yeah.
I'd like to think they do. So we love to be on the side of a female decision maker, because they gravitate toward the right answer and goodness, and it's very accountable.
Yeah.
But you can just kind of tell when it's win-lose, and it doesn't take more than 2 or 3 conversations. I think you feel it.
Yeah. You kind of figure
Yeah.
that out.
Right.
You've mentioned several books as we've talked here today. Do you have any other books or authors or just resources in general that you might recommend to other professionals?
Well, we love books. Like I said, being around the right people and reading good books is what I think anchors me to goodness, or keeps me from crossing over the line on those 4 things that we talked about previously. But I found Rob Bell interesting, and follow him with his books and podcasts, and went to see him give a message one day. And I think Rob helps put our world where we are now and our spiritual lives in perspective. And so I love listening to Rob. And then there's a book that I think I need to keep going back to about love, and it is If Grace Is True. And this gentleman argues that how great God's love is, our Creator's love is for us, and why would that Creator ever want us to suffer, either here on earth or in an eternity. And we're in my religion of Christianity, maybe I'm in between the open tomb, the stone rolled away, and some far off spot we think we're going to land when we die.
Yeah.
And in that middle is understanding grace and just how lucky I am to believe in the most powerful force, what I think, in the universe, and how it connects us to something bigger than ourselves. And there's been a lot of quiet times where I've had to, or I've been fortunate enough to stop and be still and find that special place to be still. So that book helps me to understand maybe not the fire and brimstone part of life. And so If Grace Is True, Rob Bell, love his kind of things lately. And I have trouble reading fiction because of just, again, I'm trying to learn everything I can. So I'm still in the nonfiction world. So I'll read a lot of biographies, Benjamin Franklin and Steve Jobs, and all those things are interesting. And of course those great books about struggle of Lewis and Clark, you did those folks, and you just wonder, how in the world did you pull that off?
Yeah,
that's pretty good. I'm like you. I'm in the good book as much as I can, and that's leads to so many more questions. So I read there and I get a few answers, but I get a lot more questions than I've got answers.
Yeah.
So I try to find people who are a lot smarter than me that learn that. And that book of Risk Only Money that I mentioned before was about a guy that lived maybe a life of what some people do as entrepreneurs, and how he had stepped over the line in some things, and how he understood where he, in his wisdom as an old age, how he understood how not to do that.
A chance to step back. And
right.
See. Yeah. Great advice.
Good stuff.
So before we close out here, Malcolm, what other advice might you have for professionals out there striving for their definition of success?
Well, what we've covered a lot of it so far, but maybe something we could add is, in today where there's a lot of differing opinions and we seem to gravitate toward lining up on one side of things, and we coagulate toward those people who think like we do.
Right.
And it's a real problem.
Yes, I agree.
And I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said, I learn the most from those of which I disagree. And boy, is it hard to have a conversation with somebody that I really disagree, but I can't argue with their experiences.
Right.
Chances are they've had some experiences that make them think the way they do, which may be totally unwilling for my talents to accept.
Yeah.
So I think going forward, that's something I'm trying to open my mind up to, is to listen to people that I disagree, and it's not all on television; it's on the street, and to be confident enough to have those conversations, and that you can walk away and say, I just learned something.
Yeah.
And this terrible thing in Charlottesville, it's just, we're going to learn something from that. And many times it takes a crisis to make change.
Yeah.
So whatever change that would come from that, our Creator seems to be moving us forward no matter what.
Yeah, yeah.
Even in the odd things we read in the Old Testament, or odd things that happen in the world, if you look at it over a whole time frame, you'll find that one way or another we moved forward from the terrible actions that may have happened. So we find ways to move forward, and I would hope that our next moving forward is a understanding of the world's different cultures.
Yeah.
Be accepting of some of that we may not understand, or it's uncomfortable.
Right.
But we definitely understand the difference between evil and good. Apart from that, let's find in the middle where we can know that you grew up in a different environment I did.
Yeah.
And I pass you in the day, and I want to be understanding of that and accepting of that, and be patient with that. And it's back to what we talked about earlier, being curious.
Yeah.
Why do you think that way, or why would you act that way? I'm curious about that. And those people, I'm sure, would be curious about me. And I've grown the most from those that have been out of my comfort zone. And in this community, there's so many great people that have drugged me that way. And it was one day my wife asked me, said, who are the 4 or 5 people that you would really call on if you needed help? Just really struggling, whether it be health or a mental question, or just life in general. And 2 or 3 of those folks you would not think would be in my comfort zone to be that way. They're either a different color than I am, or they're a different religion, or they're certainly not in the socioeconomic strata that some people term as success. So I think at the end it's consistently doing this one thing that we have integrity in, and that's of doing good for people. And when we have that integrity that we have confidence in, and it's branded on us, that we were so lucky to have a great start, to build on that, then that says volumes of attaching yourself to that. And it's so great to continue in life at different stages, to have different places that you visit for your wisdom.
Yeah.
And that's different today for me than it was when I was 22.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
and just doing this today is an exercise in growth for me, because how many times do you sit down and have a gracious person ask you about life, and they will spend 30 minutes or so thinking what's on your mind, and that's rare today, that you just want to stop and learn about somebody.
Yeah.
And so I just applaud you for that. It's pretty darn cool.
Yeah. Well, I sure appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I think a lot of people can relate and can understand. You've offered some tremendous advice to all of those listening. So thank you so much just for taking the time to come and talk to us and share your story and share a little bit about your journey.
Sure. It's a wonder, and I probably talked very fast, so you may have to pause it and put it on slow-mo. But when I get excited about things and interesting people like yourself, I tend to talk fast.
No,
So
this is great. This is great. Thank you so much.
You bet,
Malcolm.
Kyle.
I appreciate having you on.
It's an honor. Thanks.
Thank you for checking out today's Business Playmaker. Links to the resources discussed in today's episode are available in the show notes. For more information and resources from your host, you can visit him at www.kylegorman.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast for the latest episodes. And until next time, make it a great day.